Please don't forget to subscribe. We are so close. I'm trying to get to 15,000 subscribers before the start of the NFL season. I am so grateful for every single subscriber I get. We are really growing as a community, and I really hope we can get there. Thank you so much. Let's get right to it.
Hurts ranked 11th, 5 spots lower than last year. The article had lots of compliments about his character and leadership, but here were the knocks on Jalen. 1, he can't handle pure pass. When he got hurt and he became immobile and they had to throw the ball, he showed what he was. Well, okay, that's, you're hurt and immobile. What do you expect? Knock number 2, the word is out there. If you run 0 blitz against Hurts or shows 0 and back everyone out, he will panic. That has to change. They lose Jason Kelce, who handled the protections, basically did everything. No, they bring in a coordinator who likes to drop back. It will be interesting. Brew, are you worried about your Eagles pick?
What was my Eagles pick?
Pick them one
to
of the
win
division?
the NFC East.
Yeah.
It wasn't to win the Super Bowl.
Oh, well, we don't know that yet.
It was last year.
Hold on, we don't know that yet.
It wasn't, but I'm saying, I'm just saying right now, I have not picked them to win the Super Bowl. So I am not in the least bit worried about them not winning the NFC East. Because a lot of that's about the other teams in the NFC East.
Okay, but are you...
I think Washington, with a rookie quarterback who I love, is not ready. Giants, we know, aren't ready. And the Cowboys, it's just been a bad offseason, even though they signed CD yesterday.
Sure.
All right, so no, I'm not worried about it. And as far as like the criticisms of Jalen, a lot of the blitz, he definitely struggled with mightily last year. But a lot of that is also on the coaching staff and the offensive coordinator. And I do think Kellen Moore is going to really come in and help him. I think, you got to give him the answers. When we read there was the article, the long form piece about Sirianni and Jalen not getting along. A lot of it, Jalen didn't think he was getting the answers to what the defense was throwing at him. I think that's Kellen Moore's charge, and I think he'll do it. So I think they're going to be fine, and I think Jalen's going to have a bounce-back year.
All right, I want to talk about Jalen, but first, I have to say this, and I know it might sound mean. We have no evidence Kellen Moore's good.
Yes, we do.
He's good with Dallas.
Okay, but when he left, Dak had his best year ever.
Oh, my
God. So here's what I believe happened. People thought Dak was something, and he played well. People were like, oh, it's Kellen Moore. Look, it's Kellen Moore, guys. And then Kellen Moore leaves. Dak is even better. He goes to Justin Herbert, who has his worst year. I'm not saying Kellen Moore is not good.
As Travis O'Shea pointed out, okay, Kellen Moore had that riddled Chargers offense 11th in passing, okay? And that was with a disaster of a culture, a disaster of a head coach, and just a million injuries. And yet he still had that offense doing something. So stop with this. And then Kellen Moore built that offense with the Cowboys. Yes, he left, and then they ended up still having a great season. Do you think it had anything to do with the fact that they just ate up on terrible teams? They actually had their worst playoff performance without Kellen Moore. They were way better when they actually played better teams with Kellen Moore. So if you want to say that the Dallas Cowboys without Kellen Moore and Dak Prescott were able to feast more on bad teams without Kellen Moore, then by all means, have at it. But at least with Kellen Moore, come time playoffs, they were at least competent. They didn't get completely embarrassed. Like, what are we talking about here? Also, Kellen Moore didn't get this prime CD Lamb. He got a young, new CD Lamb. That matters. Okay? What are we talking about here? It's so absurd. So we have the evidence. I'm going to let the rest of this clip play, but it just makes my head want to explode. We have the evidence, and we have more evidence that the whole issue of the blitz against Jalen Hurts, or that he's not a passer, is also nonsense. I have proof. I'm gonna wait for them to talk more, and then I'll show you. But this is making me my head want to explode. It's just not accurate. We have the evidence. We have it.
I'm saying we don't have evidence he's good.
Well, maybe Mike McCarthy's also good.
Yeah, I think Mike McCarthy is also good. But again, that has nothing to do with Kellen Moore. Is Mike McCarthy going to go coach Jalen?
I'm saying Kellen Moore can be good. And Dak,
you know who I put that on in LA with Kellen Moore? Brandon Staley.
I understand we put that on Brandon Staley. That's fine. Well, like I said, I didn't say Kellen Moore is bad. I just said we don't have evidence that he's good. And the most recent evidence of the place you leave got better and the place you went to got worse is not overwhelmingly positive evidence. So I don't think Kellen Moore is going to be this panacea for what ailed Jalen Hurts. I think that's a concern. I think the second quote on there is my biggest concern about the Eagles. which is I think the loss of Jason Kelce is so massive on multiple fronts. It's massive as far as the actual job of blocking.
Sure.
It's huge. It's massive as far as everything pre-snap, which as far as protections, some quarterbacks handle, some centers handle. In Philadelphia, it's been a center. And in fact, there's a famous clip from last season of even Jalen going to change a play and Kelce overruling him, turning him around and saying, no, we're running. Or I'm paraphrasing. And so he had as much on his play as any center. And then whatever was going on in the locker room, Jason Kelce, obviously, at the end of last year, got away from everybody, but he's the locker room leader. So all of that.
He couldn't control what happened last year, yeah. So.
Yeah. I love Jason Kelce.
Right.
I love Travis Kelce. But he gets the biggest pass of all time for the Eagles losing all those games. And he's like, oh, he did a great, then the leader has to bear some of that.
And that's Jalen too,
yes,
but also Kelce.
I agree with all of that. But that doesn't mean that his loss is not going to be massive.
Sure.
So all of that concerns me. And then that last point, this is where I go to you, Greg. The pure pass is the skeleton key question for all these quarterbacks. Is when Mike McDaniel can't scheme it up for you, Tua, when you're trailing, when they're not afraid of Christian McCaffrey in the run game, when they're not afraid, when it's 3rd and 12 and everyone knows you're passing, can you do it? And to me, not only is that book still out on Jalen, to me the book would be in and it would be a no, except he was so brilliant in the Super Bowl, which has to weigh extra credit, that the book is still out. But I think these are all legitimate concerns, Greg.
They are legitimate concerns, but if I were you, Brew, and I picked them as well to win that division, I'm not concerned about it either. Look, after last year, every player is going to go back and kind of reevaluate what they did. They're going to look at the film, look at the tape. The reality is his play fell off. I would argue it didn't fall off directly after the Super Bowl. He was great the first quarter, a little bit over that of the season last season. We were talking about him being clutch last season, Mr. Clutch, because his ability to fight back and put them in position to either win the game or in position to win the game. So for me, I don't look at this as a Jalen Hurts worry situation, because we've seen him perform at a high level. It's just we haven't seen it consistently based on what we saw one complete season of, that he was great in MVP conversations. Then he dueled Patrick Mahomes, and when he had to throw, when his shoulder was hurt in that game, we all knew it, he performed greatly. Last season, every team has some bit of adversity. They just went through it and their quarterback struggled. And when a quarterback is struggling, it is hard for an offense to overcome that, period. I don't think he struggles the way that he will this year, because clearly the hope is he won't be injured. Tell me a player or any individual that is handicapped with some ability that they have that is one of their superpowers, and then you tell them to go out there and be half of that.
But if we show the Jalen Hurts, the very basic just passer rating by year, I think the concern is not that what happened last year, or what was that he was injured. It's that, and again, this is not actually, I should have looked, this is all the other years combined. But the point is, he's been around an 87 rating guy every year of his career, 86 to 90, except for the 2022 season. The concern is that was an outlier year. It wasn't that he was hurt last year, it's that who he was the year before the Super Bowl and the year after the Super Bowl, before he got injured, is just who he is.
It's an insane thing, because when he was a first-year starter, we're all of a sudden not going to give first-year starters grace. Never. They just have to completely ball out from day one. That was when Nick Sirianni was calling plays, and it was a disaster, because they also had a new coach too. Okay? And so a brand new quarterback and a brand new coach are just supposed to just be unbelievable and hit the ground running, especially when they didn't even have a number one wide receiver. They didn't have A.J. Brown yet. Okay? Shane Steichen wasn't calling the plays, yet he still led them into the playoffs. And then 22, with Shane Steichen fully controlling that offense, Jalen Hurts plays out of his mind and plays unbelievable, MVP level, and literally has one of the greatest Super Bowl performances of all time. And then the following year, he is legitimately injured, something that Nick Wright has absolutely admitted. He said that throughout the season. Something is wrong with Jalen Hurts. He does not look right. I think he will get surgery. Nick said that. I remember very vividly. I remember it. And then he had a terrible offensive coordinator. Terrible. Whether you want to blame Sirianni or whatever, the offense was not coordinated appropriately. That's not on Jalen Hurts. That's not his fault. He had players that were running out of gas, that were retiring, that were hanging on one leg. What do you want Jalen Hurts to be able to do that? If you're saying, can Jalen Hurts overcome everything that Patrick Mahomes has? Maybe if you want to make that argument that he can't, fine. But like, what are the standards here? You're either one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, or you're just the book is out on you and you're not good. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. And they want to say that he has like a fatal flaw, that he's not a good passer and he's not a good against the blitz. You know, let me show you my graphic over here, because he was 10-2. If he had a legitimate fatal flaw, then this would not look like this. Okay, versus the blitz, touchdown to interception, he was 10-2, and then in 23 he was 5-8. That was the Eagles, specifically the coaching staff, failing Jalen Hurts. Okay, this was done onto him rather than him doing it to the Eagles. They were not giving him answers. They were not putting him in a position to be able to succeed. As well as him being injured, what do you want him to do? What do you want him to do in that situation? Nobody was ever open. Every single throw was contested. There was no motion, no imagination. It was the most like simplified, regressive offense anyone has ever seen. And yet Jalen Hurts is supposed to just magically overcome that? It doesn't make any sense. It makes zero sense. And the fact that they want to use his first year as a starter as some sort of indictment, it's just, you can't win. Because if he plays great that first year, they say, oh, that was just, no one has film on him. No one has tape on him. He's not that good. Or it's a team around him, like they do with Brock Purdy. And then the following year, he leads the team to the Super Bowl. And they're just like, well, that was just an outlier year because the following year, look, it's just not as good. And it's like, he led them to the playoffs again. And he was injured, dislocated finger, messed up knee, terrible coaching staff that was then fired. Like, I just don't know what you could possibly expect in that situation, or why Jalen Hurts is held to this, like, I don't want to say absurd standard, but it just doesn't really make sense. Some of these standards I get when we're talking about the GOATs, when we're trying to talk about Tom Brady, when you're trying to talk about Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, when you're trying to say who's like the best quarterback in the NFL right now, who is going to be the GOAT, then you really nitpick. And that's totally appropriate. Totally appropriate. If people are going to say that you were one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, it is totally appropriate. If Lamar Jackson's getting all these MVPs and then not able to win the playoffs, that criticism is totally appropriate. But like, Jalen Hurts isn't being crowned as the next GOAT. Like, this type of level of nitpicking doesn't make any sense. And it can clearly be explained. I just did it. That's what this whole video of me just explaining was. It's as clear as day. If Shane Steichen was still the OC and then this all happened and he wasn't injured, then I would say, yeah, maybe that was an outlier year. But when you give him no coaching, no one to help him, what do you think Jalen Hurts is going to be able to do? He can only do so much. Patrick Mahomes can only do so much. Joe Burrow can only do so much. Josh Allen can only do so much. Any quarterback can only do so much. The fact that he was able to hold it together with one of the most regressive, predictable offenses and still lead this team, and a terrible defense and still lead this team in the playoffs is nothing short of amazing. Absolutely amazing. So no, I reject this idea that you should be worried about the Eagles, or that this anonymous DC on Hurts, he can't handle pure pass. He panics when he's getting blitzed. Then why didn't he panic in 22? So it was just an outlier year that he wasn't panicked, and now he's panicked. He lost the ability to handle the blitz. He lost the ability to pass. That doesn't make sense. That does not actually make sense. Jalen Hurts, like any other quarterback, needs to have a coach, a head coach or a coordinator who understands the offense, who can put him in a position to succeed. Patrick Mahomes needs it, and so did Tom Brady. You're right. Jalen Hurts is not good enough to overcome bad coaching. You're right. Neither is a single quarterback in NFL history. So I guess he's just like everyone else in that regard. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Should anyone be worried? Should the Eagles, I guess, be worried with Jalen Hurts and this anonymous defensive coordinator on Hurts? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so that you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.